So today I'm talking to Steve Delight. Hello, Steve.
Hello. Yeah, I'm not bad. Yourself?
Yes, good, thank you. We were just discussing travel vans before we click record. Um, you must tell me a little bit more about this because it looks really good where you are. You're on your
Well,
travels.
I'm in Southern Ireland, down near a place called Duras. Um, and the other place, which I can't remember now because we were going there yesterday. Bantry. My partner's just coming to grab
Oh,
something.
good. I'm glad she's arrived because she
Good
knows where
call.
you're going.
Yeah, she did navigate us here, to be fair. So
Right.
yeah, she has some friends who live down this way. So we've just called by, really.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, Southern Ireland, absolutely beautiful.
I know it's lovely. It's lovely.
Yeah.
And you've got decent weather, which is bonus.
Well, you know what? Um, no, not really. The weather's been pretty atrocious, and
Oh, okay. Well, you are Southern Ireland, so come on.
yeah, yeah. Well, we live in North Wales, so
Oh,
yeah, it's not anything we're unused to, really. Yeah,
no,
rain
exactly.
is but no, it's almost like autumnal spring showers. When a shower comes through, it's absolutely torrential,
Hmm.
you know. But
Yeah,
yeah, so yeah,
it's been like that here, to be quite honest. And
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
in Sussex, so well, I'm in Kent at the moment, but it doesn't matter. It's been pouring. So
Well, we're heading south. This is just the start of a trip, a quick zip into Ireland for a couple of weeks, and then we're heading south. I'll be in Morocco in a week or so. So yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so, okay,
So I don't feel sorry for me with being rained on because soon I'm
no,
not going to be rained on. Yeah.
brilliant. So look, traditional first question is, what do you do?
Oh yes, it probably sums up everything I could say. Really, is I really don't know what I do.
Ah,
Uh, uh, God, short answer, long answer. Well, I travel at the moment, but actually, I'm pretty much retired from a career working in criminal justice, mostly in the UK, but also Sweden, Norway, and Australia.
hmm,
Um, Pretty much burnt out by that, not by the characters I met, but by frankly, the nonsense that goes with public sector funding. Just burnt me out, really. Um, and I now work as uh, uh, I do occasional work as a maintenance man. So yeah, I can turn my hand to most trades. I can badly plumb, I can badly wire, I can badly paint, and I do a little bit of work for a friend. Yeah, so yeah, so
well, so,
that's
sounds good.
yeah. But I guess the other aspect of it is I attempt play music and record music and get involved in other more artistic things. So I'm guessing you don't want to talk about plumbing today.
Well,
Although I could talk
actually,
to you
there's a
about
lot of things you've said there, which I think are really important because, okay, yeah, I am interested in the music because you've sent me some stuff and it's really good. I mean, I played some of the tracks to some friends of mine. One of them went, God, that sounds. I think it was actually um, the Elvis Costello track. And he said, "That sounds
oh,
like."
okay,
He said,
shipbuilding, yeah.
"Yeah, yeah." And he said, "God, it sort of sounds sort of Pink Floydy." I thought, "Yeah, it does actually. It's got that
Yeah,
sort of quality to it, you know." And I like the
yeah.
video. The
Sorry, go
videos.
on.
I like the videos as well. They're really well done.
Yeah, well, I mean, the kind of pre-chat we had. Yeah, I mean, they're good because of somebody else. I'm the front man, but
Lots
the
of
engine
recordings are
behind
good
them.
because of the producers. Come on, you know.
Well, the
Yeah,
producer is also the bassist on both tracks. A guy called Richard is, and who I met. He lives in Ireland, and I've only met him once. He came to have a chat with me when I was playing a gig in North Wales. You know, and people come along and say hello in the break, and normally I don't exchange details, but we did exchange details, and he got back to me and asked me if I was interested in doing a couple of. I think the She Caught the Katie video was my
yeah,
suggestion.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, Richard is a bassist, and I don't think we'd be offended to be described as that wonderful combination of someone who's musical and also quite geeky when it comes to technology.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and like I say, I met him last week. We went out for a meal with our respective partners. It's the first time we'd met face to face, having done a couple of years of work online, and we were chatting about that. And what I do when I'm faced with a technological issue musically is I instantly get pissed off with the technology, myself, and everything else. And I shut down and I walk off in a bit of a strop because I'm sick of not being able to manage stuff. And Richard was saying what he does is he just says, right, I'm going to nail this. I'm going to work out how to do it.
Mm.
And the shipbuilding video is created on a door called Reaper, which isn't really a video thing, but he did some really interesting work with it.
He
He
did
did
some
say,
really, he did do some really good stuff on that. Yeah,
yeah, and I think he's now because of that decided to try another video editor because he kind of was pushing Reaper to its limit. But I would never push it to its limit because instantly that something didn't work, I'd be pissed off and go and have a cup of coffee or
well,
go. It would turn
I
me
am
off.
I am the same as you. I have a real problem with tech because it's boring. It bores me silly. And as soon as it's like we've got to try to work out how this thing works, it's not like something that's analog where you can sort of go, that bit connects there, and you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It just seems to be you could just do something really silly, you know, press the wrong button on something. And I just not doesn't do anything for me at all.
No,
So
it turns me off. It really does turn me off. Yeah, similarly. Yeah.
yeah. So whenever I've recorded or done anything like that over the years, I've always that's their job, you know. I go in to do the performance, they're going to record me, and I can sit and put, you know, my two penneth in when it comes to sort of mixing and you know, just the sort of production side of it. But I don't. That's my thing. I don't want anything to do with the technology. I never have done.
Well,
That's
I
somebody
think
else's
that
domain.
that is a very parallel experience because um, that's why the production of those two videos has been so satisfying musically because I've done almost exactly what you said. I've delivered my bit, which is singing on both and guitar on one, and then I've chucked my two penneth in during the production stage, and which is very inclusive in that regard, and particularly with shipbuilding because shipbuilding was out of my range vocally. It was basically I could just about hit the low notes and I could just about hit the high notes. And I should have said right from the beginning, can we shift the key? But I didn't. And he ended up with quite an interesting kind of mix. So you've got me. If you heard the raw recordings, you'd be like, "Oh, believe me, I have heard the raw recordings." But we managed to make them work. So sorry, I forgot what the
Well, we're
yeah
just
yes
basically saying about you were saying that it's nice to meet somebody who's got the mix of being musical but also a bit geeky, so they can
yeah,
get
and
something.
and it allows you to do what you want to do. I mean, I'm pretty new to music and recording generally. I probably only sang in public about my late 40s, and I'm just over 60 now, and so I'm pretty new to that whole the very idea of performing in public. Certainly as a singer was you know outrageous. I think somebody asked me. what it was like singing on stage, and I said it's like taking all your clothes off and asking if your bum looks big in this, and it's kind of
Yes. Yeah, that's a very
very
good, that's a
exposing.
very good
Yeah,
description.
yeah, play. Yeah, no disrespect to the musicians, the guitarists out there. That I personally found singing far more exposing. But going back to the kind of focus of what we were talking about, uh, when I um, when I look at successful recording artists, I don't envy them their success, so to speak. Money would be kind of nice, but what I envy is them being able to just have people around them that allow them to do what they're best at and not do all the other stuff, which frankly I'm rubbish at. And that's what I envy more than anything else. And I sent you some EP tracks. I'm about to release an EP, which has been about 2 years in the making. The recording took 2 minutes, and then getting into the stage of releasing them has taken 2 years because of this whole getting involved in technology and thinking, "Oh, sod that! I just don't want to be involved in that." And yeah, so yeah, 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 just that whole process of getting involved in trying to record something, and the idea of having other people around who do stuff is lovely. And I did indulge myself in the end, and actually just because we all have friends who can do a bit of this and friends that can do a bit of that, and I know a few people who have that combination of music and technology. But eventually, I paid somebody to produce these 6 tracks because I just thought, let's be realistic. I'm not in this to make money. This is an indulgence, and I just and neither am I the greatest singer in the world. I just want to be the best. I want to be the best version of myself that I can. And
Yes.
eventually, I paid to Jake Evans. Jake has had some success musically, fantastic guitarist and singer. And I knew him from a kind of music scene in Macclesfield, and I just approached him, and he didn't charge me the world. But I just said, Jake, can you produce this because I'm struggling, and I just want it done. So the versions I sent you, they're the final versions, and I am happy with them.
Mm.
And now I've got this leap of how do I actually just put them out on Spotify and even get. I'm not sure whether it's worth it, but I think I'm going to get a CD produced. Although I don't own a CD player, so it seems a bit ridiculous, really. But something to sell at gigs, maybe.
Right. There's lots of things there, and I think again because we're talking about like creativity, the main the reason I do this is because I'm nosy, basically. This podcast, but in actual fact, if I was a younger version of myself, I would have listened to people's life experiences because even then I was aware that the best way to progress is to find out what other people have done. And it doesn't have to be the lesson for me in all of this is that I've interviewed a few sort of names.
Right.
Their stories actually aren't as revealing as people who aren't so well known. There's more things in those where you've got, like yourself, somebody has come to music later, but you're doing it because you want to do it. It's something you want to do. And in actual fact, the results are probably better than if you were trying to do this to make some money. Because you're doing it because you like to do it, you see. And I do a lot of well, I used to do a lot of talks about music business to different groups of people, musicians, young players and all that stuff. And my attitude towards it was always this sort of street cred thing. Because obviously in colleges and stuff, they want to teach you about, record companies and all the rest of it. But part of this was like getting that thing where you know what it is that you do because you love it. Because that's the thing that drives your creativity. And then making sure obviously there's some money coming in from somewhere if that's how you're making your money. But it might not be the creative thing you're doing. It might be something else that brings the money in. And there's nothing wrong with that. And in all of these interviews that I've done, I've come across a lot of people who are great artists, really great. You know, they write books or whatever, but they actually make their money somewhere else. But that doesn't stop them being artists. And you know, you saying that about, you know, obviously knowing your limitations about things that you think, I just want this thing done. And of course, that is the best thing of knowing your limits, isn't it? And actually thinking, well, this person over here is really good, and I trust them with what I've got to finish the work off. You know, you've met someone, and I've always worked that way. I've had people that I trust with the work that I do to get something that I like at the end of it, and it might not be necessarily the thing that I envisage at the beginning, because sometimes their contribution adds something to what I've done.
Oh, without doubt.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think that is a lesson that people need to understand. And I've just finished a book, and it's taken me a long time to do. And the last process of this, getting all the things together, in other words, the final elements of the production, same thing as doing music. I had to get somebody to do it, because if I'd done it, it would not be as good. And that is the point, isn't it? It's finishing up with something that you're proud of in a way that you don't find it too embarrassing to,
Yeah.
to give to somebody, right? And so
It's nice not to be embarrassed by what you produce.
exactly.
For sure.
But again, people do tend to get embarrassed by what they do. I mean, you know, because the amount of people, famous people that I know of, who don't like to listen to what they've done or don't like to watch themselves on screen. It's amazing, actually.
Right.
Well, yeah.
I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. But
you never know.
I mean, and you mentioning about your book, and we should, you know, the original connection for us was through an audio book I was producing.
Yes.
So I had a go at, and I say I was producing. I should talk. Yeah, I'd like to talk.
Yeah,
about,
do tell me about this, because it's about the Ravens.
Yeah, it's called Raven, and I live on a lovely hill in North Wales, and you know, I've kind of moved into that area and been lucky enough to get to know quite a few people who kind of live just in this very small location. It's just near Llanberis, and one of my neighbours is Alan Hughes, who's he's produced lots of video work in the past, and quite a creative guy. And he'd written an initial chapter about a young raven, and he'd built this hide on a cliff near to us. He's quite a well-known climber as well, and he'd taken lots of pictures. And then he involved somebody else in the writing as well, another person locally. And anyway, long and the short of it, they produced this book, which is a picture book called Raven, about a young raven who has adventures, and it's about life affirming discoveries as a youngster, etc. And a bit kind of Jonathan Livingston Seagull-ish. And I was just chatting to him, and he was saying, "Oh, I'm interested in trying to turn this into an audio book." And I was fighting with this DAW. I was using a free version of Pro Logic, I think. And I said, "Look, I'll have a go at recording you." I had a decent, you know, I'd gone out and spent some money on a decent mic and what have you. And we recorded it, the whole lot. We got a local storyteller, Eric Madden, to record his excerpts. George Smith, another local climber, had some poems. We had some poems in it. I recorded the whole lot, which was, you know, a challenge. So I wasn't in any way a performer. I was just doing the artistic, I was doing anything but the artistic side. And then we put it all together. And then I did do a tiny bit of a few guitar licks to join the poems together. which is quite unusual for me because I don't think of myself as a guitarist, but I did a few things. Anyway, long and the short of it is we we put it all together into a file and gave it to somebody else to do the technological bit, and they did get as far as putting it back up on a platform so people could access it. And I've given you the link to that, so feel free to share that link.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But it doesn't really work very well as an audio book, and I think it was outside of that person's knowledge base to take it further. It needed tech support, which was outside of their kind of
Yeah,
what
and
they're
again,
good at.
and that hits all of those points, doesn't it?
And so we ended up with this product that we'd all put a lot of time into, and it really wasn't out there. And I would look, and that's why I contacted a mutual friend of ours, Richard, and she said, would you be interested in helping us take this forward? Because it's all there, all the recordings are there. There's no desire. I think with any production, there's no great desire to make money out of it. But if it ended up on a Disney movie, you'd be quite happy to take you'd be quite happy to take some money for it. Don't get me wrong, but it's just about doing all that work and wanting people to be able to just press the button. That's what I love about the videos on YouTube. I can send a link to somebody, they hit the button, they can see what I've produced. Simple, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. So, and again, so looking at that, there's a lot of these elements actually. I always think they're a little bit like tiling a bathroom. You tile a bathroom, and then when you've finished, you realize you know how to tile a bathroom the next time because everything goes wrong. And there comes a point that maybe you think, well, perhaps we should get an expert tiler in, and I just sit and watch this guy, and the next time I can do it myself. But the point is you need the person who knows all the tricks, and all the stuff that needs to be done. And again, I've toyed with this idea about recording this book as for something like Audible or something. And I looked at this and I thought, yeah, I've got the gear to record it, but I probably would go into a studio and do it, and have somebody who's done something like that, who's got it on Audible, to tell me how it's done, right? Because again, like you're saying, you put a lot of work in. It's not like, as you say, it's not like you want to make a load of money out of it, but you want people to be able to access it in the place that they would be looking for audio books.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think that's, again, it's a similar thing, isn't it? You need to know the people who know the thing. But that's an interesting dilemma. But I'll have a look into this because I've got a couple of contacts that I've used to help me finish this book, and I've got a feeling that they know what the process is. So I'll let you know. All right.
And I say we because it's very much a collective thing. It's quite a local thing. It was everyone involved kind of lived on this same hill in North Wales, and it was and the magic person living on the hill didn't exist. You could say, right, I can take this and put it on Audible, and maybe I think it's an interesting kind of is it a metaphor analogy? That we've got these people living on the hill who've all contributed their bits, but we just don't happen to have the right person living on the hill, and it's a bit like we don't have the tiler living on the hill. And I think also another side to it is once you're involved in the technological side of it, there's so many scams. It feels like they're out there on the internet, and as a kind of slightly aged surfer, we're surfing on this trip, by the way. So I'm the oldest person in the break. I'm probably the worst person.
You won't be, I'm sure.
But the thing is you're unsure about what's what. Like, so this EP, I did one cover in the EP, a Tom Waits cover, and I've got to pay a fee for having that,
Good.
and so you kind of you're at that point of saying, right, I've got to enter my bank details into this. Am I entering my bank details into the right place? Is this
Yeah, yeah,
setting me up in some ways? You know, so there's a kind of nervousness about that as well, and that is the point I'm at. You know, that would be a lovely outcome from this, is just to be able to hit all the right buttons and produce this EP, because frankly, I'd like it out of the way. I'd like it, you know, I enjoy sending links to people as I did with you, and people come back with good feedback and say, oh, it sounds good. And, you know, I'd like to just move on from it. And, you know, I'm, you know, this trip is very much about trying to create more music, write more music, put ideas down.
yeah, it's a great way of doing things. Because I was a little while ago, I did a little solo podcast about, because I was down in Cornwall, Polseth actually, talking about surfing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's
Um,
a lovely place.
and I used to live in North Cornwall, and
You used to live where?
I used to live in North Cornwall, so
Oh, okay.
I used to live quite near Polseth, and apparently, I don't know how true this is, but I took my first steps on the beach. Now I don't know if that's absolutely true or not, but we used to go down to Polseth quite a bit, and I I went down there because my sister still lives in Weybridge, and so does my brother. Um, and you know, I do like a flying visit. I go down, get in the sea, go up and see my sister and stay overnight, and then go down the beach the next day, whatever, you know, and then sort of come back and then go home, type of thing. And I realised that this place was such a great location for me to sort of revive myself, because I used to take my kids down there. You know, later on, if we went down to Cornwall, Polseth was the place that we went to. So, you know, they'd be in the rock pools and everything, because everything's in the same place. It doesn't sort of move. You know, you've
Yeah,
got a
yeah,
rock
yeah.
pool. It's the same. You know, it's the same place that I remembered as a kid. It's sort of rather strange, really, because you think those things would move and shape and whatever, but they don't. And I thought, well, this is a great place to go and get ideas, because it's obviously something that it's like you feel really grounded. So you saying you're going on a trip to get ideas, I think it's a brilliant thing to do, just to sort of travel somewhere and be inspired. Um, so you said you were going to Morocco. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Where else have you got on the list?
Well, on this particular trip, we islands across Spain, down into Morocco, and then back up into the Alps for the winter. We do some Nordic cross country skiing, and
Wow. Yeah.
we do some stuff there. And then my partner, she does some work up in Norway as an instructor. So I think I'm right in saying I'm dropping her off in Amsterdam and then driving home. So it's quite a long. And we did a very similar trip last year. And this kind of van that we're in now is a marked upgrade from what I've done for quite a few years. I used to go over in a little T5, little VW, and live in the Alps where my kids were doing, you know, ski seasons, and my son became a bit of a seasonaire. And so yeah, we've done the trip, but yeah, we're doing it in luxury now. But so going back to the artistic, you know, and creating ideas, it's an interesting, yeah. I, it doesn't produce the most positive ideas for me, because there's no getting around. You know, and Morocco is one of the wealthier African nations, but it's in your face that we're Europeans and we're very wealthy, and you know we may.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a whole philosophical and political thing I'm quite interested in. Is that I feel we spend a lot of time looking up and saying, "Oh, that rich so and so, look how rich they are, bastard." But actually, we're incredibly rich, and so I find it quite challenging emotionally last time. And I talked to various people about that, and some people say, "Oh, I just don't go to poorer parts of the world because it's too challenging. But I think there's a lot of stuff to work out in all of that.
Well, it's
Yeah,
interesting
and I
because
think writing songs about it is a bit of an indulgence, frankly. But
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
anyway,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it doesn't mean to say that you're going to be writing. You know, it's like when I do sort of songwriting with people and teach them how to songwrite, and I often do a protest song, and of course they're really difficult to do because the really successful protest songs don't actually say directly what it is they're protesting about. It's very, very metaphorical. A lot of Dylan stuff is like that.
right.
But of course, what you're saying about being inspired about being in a place is a bit like a protest song, isn't it? The inspiration that has to come from somewhere else. It's not really you commenting on what's going on or anything like that. It's
That's interesting. Yeah,
you know,
that's
it's
in. I get that. That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Is this an elaborate sting to sell me a whole load of production and
no, it's not.
marketing and
No, it's not.
songwriting? Because
No, no,
I
no,
am picking up a
no.
few things from it.
Oh, no, good because that's the whole point. That when people listen to this stuff, they might sort of go, "Well, that's a bit." See, going back to your thing about the traveling, and I wanted to hook this back to something you said very early on, because you said that you were involved, you know, working in the sort of like the prison service and law and all the rest of it, right? The legal side of things,
Well, rehabilitation was my game.
rehabilitation.
Yeah.
You are familiar with the link of people who are in that system and the fact that, you know, lack of education, maybe poverty, you know, all the things that lead to families being in that sort of scenario. I mean, it's a complex thing. I'm not saying it's as simple as that. But when you look at other societies, you may see things differently to other people who might just go, well, don't go to the poor
Yeah.
places.
Yeah.
But you probably have a different way of seeing the world because of your experience dealing with people in this country. Well, not just in this country, because you said you've been involved in other countries as well.
Yeah, I mean that's another whole conversation, and not one I'm quite happy to have, but it's yeah, it's it's complicated. It's certainly true. Yeah, um, yeah. I guess I felt a bit foolishly challenged by my trip last year because it wasn't telling me anything. I knew the world was a pretty terrible place, and justice was few and far between, and yet it still impacted me quite a lot. And as you say, having worked in the areas I've worked at, I know that ours is hardly a particularly just society in its own right. But yeah, but it was interesting. Yeah, it was interesting, and as I say, that is a whole conversation, and yeah, and you can direct me back to that if you like, but I guess focusing on the creativity part of it is, and I think this is common for a lot of people in music. I don't know whether many people see themselves as great musicians. I certainly don't. I see myself as extremely limited, and what I'm good at is I'm good at generating ideas. I have a notebook from last year's winter trip that is full, absolutely full of half lyrics, half chord constructions, a whole lot of stuff. And the EP that I'm releasing is with a a wonderful musician called Charlie Ormrod Morley, and Charlie has skills. Charlie's half my age, but has skills that I can't even dream of musically. And I had because we don't live in the same town now, and I guess we're both doing very different things. But being in the presence of someone who you can say, "Oh, this is half a lyric," and then it seems to go to, and you can sing a note, and they'll turn around and say, "Oh, that's what that is." And that I know we've talked about needing text, but actually having Charlie's is also incredibly helpful. Someone who has musical knowledge in abundance, and I and Yeah, I that would be a great thing as well. And when I first moved to North Wales about 4 or 5 years ago, I was fronting a band um, in the Macclesfield area, which was fairly unoriginally called Misty Delight and the Travelling Blues Orchestra. It was named that by a single person who used to play with me, and he used to say, "I'm the Travelling Blues Orchestra," and that's Mr. Delight. But it then grew, and we had a whole range of musicians. And when I first moved to North Wales, that kind of finished, and I just performed solo for a couple of years, really, quite a lot. I was gigging at the same sort of places, because we get holiday traffic coming through, so you can afford to have the same musician regularly, and I'd be playing regularly, and I enjoyed that. It kind of helped me find a place for myself musically. But yeah, certainly it's not just techs I'm looking out for now. I'm also starting up a three-piece with. I found a double bass player, and I found and slightly lost a brilliant drummer, and I'm hoping that they'll still be on board. So it's that collaboration is
Mm.
absolutely true. And so I'm gushing a whole lot of stuff here. You talked about Paul Zeth. Well, I used to have a dog um, who we named Padstow after,
Yeah, right.
but he ended up being Paddy.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
wrote a song about Paddy, which I'm really pleased with, and I've recorded it for the EP. But you say I wrote the song. Even Charlie would say, "Well, it's your song, Steve. You wrote it." But actually, who made it? The song that it is, collaboration,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I knock out a few chords. I'm a fairly basic. I'm a decent rhythm guitarist. I can play well enough to support my voice. Um, but having another musician who kind of brings that angle, that beautiful. And I've had very little of that. I need to do much, much more of that. Is collaborate with other musicians, and because it is about pooling resources. Sounds a bit lame, but it is,
It
and
is.
and
And being
sparking off other
inspired.
people.
And being
You know,
inspired. Yeah, it is.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think I think we always underestimate that because, a band like the Beatles were the Beatles because of the collaboration between all of them,
yeah, yeah,
and the evidence to support that is that they were independently, they were never as good or successful as they were as the Beatles.
yeah,
Even John Lennon, you could look at that and go, you know, but they the way that they cooperated and coordinated and and fought over ideas and all the rest of it, I think was really important. Well, it was important. I mean, the evidence is in the work that they produced,
yeah, for sure.
and you could look at most great bands, and that is the situation. Led Zeppelin is another good example.
Yeah,
Uh, the Stones, right? So, and you see it in your own life, don't you? Like you said that. You've just said that about your ideas. Once somebody else comes along and they can put all that stuff together. Um, but they're coming from your idea. In that instance, it's your idea that they pick up on and run with it. And I was very fortunate to be involved in a band right at the very beginning of the first proper band that I was in, because I've been in loads of little bands and stuff, but this one had some sort of direction and all the rest of it. And we had three songwriters in the band, a four-piece band with three songwriters in it. And one of them was, well, I think he was, in my opinion, he was a genius in what he did. And he was very eccentric, but he challenged you about what you wrote. Because he'd say something, oh, you don't want another sort of love song. It's too obvious. If you're going to write a love song, it's got to have a different angle, right? So you'd be very wary about writing something that was sort of cliched because he'd rip it to pieces. But what you ended up with was a really sort of stylish way of looking at things and seeing a little twist in a story or something, or something that was a metaphor for the thing that you wanted, and that, that once you start writing like that, and that was due to this guy, because you couldn't get
That's
away.
a really interesting idea. I mean, I think, I tend, after I've watched a movie, I tend to go on the internet and find out about the movie and interested in the background. But I think one of the things I might be doing after this chat is going and finding out a little bit more about songwriting, because yeah, God, good songwriting is is a wonder to behold. I look at Dylan's constructions and think, "You're so simple and
Yeah.
so brilliant."
Yes.
Um, yeah,
Yes. No,
yeah,
that is absolutely. When you start peeling away the layers of a song, and it's on the surface, it just seems to be simple. And then as you start to sort of peel it away, you start to think, oh, God, that's brilliant.
yeah,
That is
yeah.
like, there's lots of people like that and little musical jokes that go on within a song. I was thinking about Sting. Sting's lyrics have often got some little twist in them. Paul Simon, again, Leonard Cohen. Uh, and they really sort of suck you into and of course all you can do is be inspired by that. You can't just nick that idea. You can't nick that idea and stick it into your own song because it just doesn't work. But once you start, a bit like I was saying about this guy that I knew, Brian, it makes you look differently at things and you come up with ideas inspired by somebody else. I think that's really important. But
That's
yeah,
quite interesting how you almost trying to look at the structure backwards. It's like, I don't know. I'm not a painter, but I've seen. It's almost looking at an oil painting, and when I've seen painting, there's that classic guy who's a little bit cliche, but used to build these paintings up. It was quite popular during lockdown back in the 70s, and you'd see how it was built up. And when you watch, and street performers do it, painting, they do something, you think, what the hell's that about? And then 5 minutes later, you see, oh, that's the purpose of that. That's how it happened. And looking at a song and working out how somebody got there, that's yeah, like peeling back the layers. But that's a musical archaeological endeavor.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it is, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was chatting to someone in a pub last night before forgetting to pay for the meal, which is where my partner's gone to pay for the meal now. But we were talking about archaeology, and because I've done a bit of building work recently as a kind of retirement place. I said what I love about archaeology is you look at an ancient wall several thousand years old, and you see a stone and you think somebody picked that stone up and chose where it went, slotted it in, did this, did that. That's amazing. And we're looking at it several thousand years later. But I also said this person rather glibly, I said there were probably a lot of crap builders around as well at the time, but their walls don't exist anymore. They've kind of gone. And I don't know what the point is. I think I know where the point is with music. Is you look at I read about somebody as quite a well-known songwriter saying, what they do is they just write lots of songs. They just write lots of songs,
Yeah.
and occasionally one will come along that's quite good. I
Yes,
think what
yeah,
I do is I angst over it too much, and then
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
I'm generally writing about things I care about,
yeah.
I
Okay, so
angst over them too long.
that's a very, very interesting point. There's several things there. When you listen to pop music from the 1960s, you think, oh my God, some of that stuff is absolutely brilliant, brilliant. And I remember there used to be a program, what's his name? He used to do it, Sounds of the 60s, I think it was called. Matthews. can't think of his name. Anyway, Brian Matthews, he was on BBC Radio, and he'd do these request programs for songs from the 1960s. Well, they were terrible songs, but of course they were being requested. And you think, I've never heard that before, and I never really want to hear that again. You know, really bad songs. And of course, they're not the ones that we remember. Because there are all these amazing songs by the Beach Boys and all the rest of it, and the Beatles and whatever, that you remember. But you don't necessarily remember the song by the Honey Drippers or something like that, right? Because, as you say, their walls fell down. You know? And so we do a lot of that thing about as if everything we're doing has got to be crafting a masterpiece. But in actual fact, I think a lot of people, as you said, wrote a lot of songs. Again, good example of this was Prince. I knew somebody who'd met, I know a couple of people who met Prince, but there's a guy who met Prince quite early on. You know, he was obviously famous, but it was back in probably the 1990s, this guy met Prince. And he said that Prince had, so by the mid to late 90s, Prince had unreleased but recorded about a catalogue of about 400 songs.
Wow.
So if you sit with that for a minute, that's a lot of songs.
That is a lot of songs.
That's a lot of songs. So he was obviously experimenting, and it was a case of he could literally just write a song. And you know, there's a thing of, because he used to use cut up and all that sort of stuff, which is something I teach, where you just take random things and put them together, and then magically they start to become very poetic and whatever. And he did this on the Muppet Show on Sesame Street, or whatever it was. I think it was the Muppets, where he takes a menu and creates a song out of a menu in a restaurant while all the Muppets are around. And you think, right, so that's what the guy could do. He could make a song out of nothing, right? And whatever, typical sort of William S. Burroughs technique, right? So again, what you're hearing as the Prince repertoire are the things that he thought were good. And then there'll be a couple of other songs that he didn't particularly think were good because he didn't record them, but somebody else recorded them, like Sinead O'Connor. You know, so I think you're right there. I think you're right that there were a lot of walls, you know,
in ancient
built in ancient times.
Never made the cut.
Exactly.
There's a song in that, isn't there?
Absolutely.
That's the other thing you can end up doing with songwriting, I find, is that, you know, very, very much an amateur songwriter, is that you get sucked into writing a song about writing a song, and you know, there are obviously some really good examples of that, but that's what I love about lyric construction, is they're obtuse, not obtuse, that's the wrong word, but then they're not directly.
No,
they're not too obvious. That's really.
Well, that is the point, isn't it? This is what I was saying about protest songs. Because if you write a protest song that's too direct, it's just rubbish. It just sounds so cliched and everything. The thing about a good protest song is it's got to be indirect. It's got to make you come to the realization of what the song is about. Otherwise, it just doesn't have the impact.
So this song, Paddy's song, I called it after my dog, and you know, I only worked out what that was about after I'd finished recording it. Frankly, you know, someone said, "Is it life lessons from a golden retriever?" And it is kind of, but you know, the meaning kind of emerged as I was getting it down, really. And it's so simple, and you know, I'm picking it up now. And
no, that's good. No, it's good, because I think that happens quite a lot.
Right.
I've written songs that my life started to copy. And that is, and it wasn't until, and it was like sort of 20 years later, but things started to happen. It was like, crikey, perhaps I should have written a different song here. Because I think whether that is just the undercurrent of what you know unconsciously about yourself that starts to reveal itself later in the real world, but you can dream it
Right.
in a lyric. Or whether there's something even weirder than that, that actually you start to make that happen, because all of these things are possible. I mean, particularly when you start getting people writing songs about their own demise, and that's how they die, whether that's John Lennon's Happiness is a Warm Gun, or Kurt Cobain's Son of a Gun is another one. These both people killed by guns. I think that's those things. It's not that there's an answer, but what I'm saying is that thing is when you start to ponder those things and play with those ideas, it's all part of that sort of magical, creative thing that goes on when we make things, because we're dealing with a part of the brain that we don't really understand anymore. We don't understand ourselves, do we? Creative is just such a weird thing.
Well, it's yeah. I'm sure I've written this somewhere. I've heard something. Life only makes sense backwards, and songs are a little bit like that.
Yes, they're absolutely like that. They're
Yeah.
absolutely like that. Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
the question I haven't asked you, which I
Oh,
normally ask right at the very beginning, people who play music, when did you start getting interested in music?
I a friend of mine who I still occasionally play music with. He plays guitar for me sometimes. Um, his artistic name is Almond, and he was a mate of mine when I was a teenager. And I think he bought a guitar, and I think I probably bought a guitar around about the same stage, but I just didn't get into it like Al did. He's immensely more talented guitarist than me, but I was kind of playing with it then. So I've always had a guitar around. I got broken into when I lived in Manchester, and I had two guitars. They both got stolen, and I probably had a gap there before I got around to buying one again. So I've dabbled in guitar. I played piano as a kid, and yeah, it's probably not the most rock and roll thing, but I probably bored my kids senseless with playing quite a lot of Oasis songs when they were kids, So in fact, my daughter told me the other day because I said, "Oh, what song do you want to hear?" She said, "She's Electric," and there was a lyric. Like now, I can't do the punchline now because I can't. Oh, yeah. She always thought the lyric was cheesy, as in bread and cheese, cheese electric. So as a young girl, she'd always been singing cheese electric. So complete aside now.
That's
Sorry,
brilliant.
Ellie, if you watch this. But so I played and I kind of became, I saw an app, it said to, describe your playing. I came a bit of a campfire guitarist, I guess. I could knock out quite a few tunes, and I always found that the best way of getting the timing of I'd always be singing in my head, and then only about 15 years ago, I met this guy who was doing Elvis. He was an Elvis impersonator, and I said, "Oh, I could play a few Elvis songs, And so I played guitar for him. I had a couple of quite bizarre experiences. I'll only tell you one. Walking down a steam engine, going along, and it was an Elvis night. Everyone's dressed as Elvis, and I'm walking down the coach, the smoke going past the windows, playing my guitar, knocking out whatever Elvis numbers we were doing, with Elvis in full regalia right in front of me.
Yeah, that sounds
So
great.
a strange experience. It was like, have I cut back to my, days of taking hallucinogens and what have you? But anyway, I think what I recognised in this fella was that he didn't have the greatest voice, but what he had was confidence.
Yeah.
And I realised that what people most want to hear, or most don't want to hear, is they want to hear confidence in the voice. It's quite you can sound unconfident and get away with it, but mostly it's quite cringeworthy. And I think owning and having confidence in your voice, my job was teaching and presenting to people, and I thought I think I just thought, sod it, I'm gonna have a go at this. And I did a couple of backing songs for him, and then I kind of yeah, so that's how I got into it. So it's a bit of a potted history because it's only 15 years ago, really, that I ever sang in front of anybody, or even apart from inflicting Oasis songs on my kids, probably played much. I
Yeah,
played
but
in front of
that's
friends. But
that's what children are
sorry,
there for.
long answer.
To inflict all of your problems and errors on them.
Oh
That's
yeah,
what they provide.
that's what their job is.
Absolutely is what their job is. Now you're talking about confidence. That is absolutely, I think, is absolutely true because public speaking is that, isn't it? If you
Yeah,
if you are not confident doing public speaking, it sounds like you're not telling the truth, right?
yeah, that is
Um,
interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it is absolutely true, and because I sort of dabble around and play a bit of jazz, I'm not a jazz guitar player. I can cheat. I'm a fraud, but I can play, you know, a lot of sort of jazz stuff, right? And one of the things about in jazz, this sort of playing outside, in other words, out of key, where you hear like great sax players do this, they can just they're in another key. They're not even the key that the song is in. One of the rules of that is you've got to play it like you mean it.
Right.
Because if you don't, it sounds wrong.
Sound awful. Yeah,
You've got to be confidently playing the wrong notes to make the outside playing work. And of course, that is such a great metaphor, isn't it? If that's true with public speaking, singing, and playing jazz, it's like being it's like being a confidence trickster, right? You,
yeah, yeah.
you've got to do it like you mean it, like otherwise it just sounds wrong. It
Well,
sounds
most of my work is teaching people how to work in rehabilitative roles, but part of it was sometimes about teaching people how to present. And I always used to say to people, if you're not feeling confident, just pretend,
yes,
and your confidence will follow along later
yes,
on.
yeah, yeah,
And that's an easy thing to say when you are a confident speaker, but it's
but it is
true. I mean,
true. But it is true, isn't it?
and actually, 2 nights, 3 nights, I was at a place called Cooling. That's terrible. This because anyway. I went along to a pub, um, and I took a guitar. I've actually got a little 3/4 guitar with me, and I took it along. So I thought there might be some music playing. Then there was an Irish jig little group together. Quite an informal thing, playing anything except guitars. So there was accordion, various flutes. And I said, "Do you mind if I sit in?" And they were like, "Well, why not?" And I sat in and realised I had no idea where they were going. I joked to them. I said, "By the time you finished your song, I've worked out where you're going, and by then it's too late." So,
Yeah, yeah.
but I was kind of muddling along, and anyway, they turned around to me and said, "Do you want to play a song yourself?" And so I just I thought, well, why not? And so I just played a song completely out of keeping with
Yeah, yeah.
the genre because that's not a genre I play, and I got a great round of applause. It was a Big Joe Turner number, Flip Flop and Fly, and so. But I was thinking, what the hell am I going to do? They've asked me to play something, and I just did that with confidence. Just thought, I sod this. I'm going to give them Flip Flop and Fly, and a couple of them joined in, and there's quite a decently full pub, and people were pretty. It went down well. But I think it went down well partly because I was in my head, I was going, "Oh, sod it! I'm just going to have to go for this
That's
and
right.
knock out a bluesy rock and roll number." But yeah, so
Mm.
confidence, I think, does. It's a really interesting thing. It's a very hard thing to develop. And like I say, I used to say to people, if you're not confident, just pretend,
Yeah.
and it'll come. But that thing you said about you sound like you're not telling the truth. I never thought of it like that. But I think that's yeah. I think that is certainly a part of it as well. Yeah,
Yeah, it sort of slightly sounds dishonest if you think of
yeah.
that public speaking sort of point of view, or
Just
that
pretend you're
you're
confident. Yeah,
completely unsure of what you're saying. Um, and I think that's the thing. As soon as you present something in a particular way, so it just makes you obviously you know this very well with your experience of sort of life experience that what we pick up from what people are saying is not just the words,
no,
it's
God, no.
the delivery and everything. I mean, probably non-verbal aspect of communication is, is registering on part of the brain that's not dealing with words. That's what we either like somebody or not. You know,
But sorry to interrupt, but I'll chuck it. I think this is an interesting reinforcing anecdote. Is in another life, I was writing training manuals for a rehabilitation program. I think it was substance use and violence and whatnot. I can't remember the detail of it, but I'd written this training manual, and I trained some Swedish trainers to deliver it. So I kind of gave over my job, and they asked me to come over and watch them present it. And I said, well, I'll do that. What language are you going to be presenting in? And obviously they were presenting in Swedish. And I said, you sure you want me to come over? Because I can order a beer in Swedish, but not much else. And I would sit at the back of a training room for, I think a couple of courses were 2 weeks long. And at the end of every day, I would give feedback to the Swedish trainers
yeah,
on their delivery.
yeah,
And right at the beginning, I was like, "Are you sure this is useful?" And they
yeah.
and
No,
and they
I
invited me
get
back to
that.
do it again. So I was
Yeah,
presenting feedback to people who were delivering a language I didn't really understand. I had written the training manual they were working from, so obviously I had a pretty good idea. But that really reinforced that thing we're very fond of saying, that it's only a small part of communication is the words. And
it's
yeah,
it is. I mean, obviously, choice of words are very important.
of
Um,
course.
but as you say, lots of stuff that goes on in life. I mean, if you watch somebody walking down the road, you can get an idea of what state of mind they're in, whether they're
Yeah,
happy or sad or
yeah.
just bored or whatever, just by their body language of walking along. It's
But
really, yeah,
sorry, I'm interrupting you a bit now, but I was looking at. I have a friend who's Moroccan immigrant who lives in Macclesfield area, and I met up with him. He was meeting a bunch of his friends who'd all emigrated to different parts of the world, and they were coming back together as surfers. And I spent a lovely bit of time with them, and there's a little bit of English spoken, but mostly it's all in Arabic. And my Arabic is a damn sight worse than my Swedish, like almost non-existent. And I and it was lovely to be around people who didn't feel the need to constantly be translating for you and just hanging out with people. But I did find that culturally, it made me aware that as Europeans, it's much easier to pick up the non-verbal language of another European. You feel much more part of that than you do outside. It's much more challenging, I found. And I'm meeting up with some of those friends again in a week or so, and I'm looking forward to that. I've been trying to learn some Arabic, but
well, there's another
I,
interesting point here. My father could speak Arabic.
oh yeah,
Um, he was, when he had me, he was quite an old dad, and he'd been a professional soldier for most of
okay,
his life. And of course, he was stationed in Alexandria and Cairo and all the rest of it. And then later on, he was in Nairobi, so he could speak Swahili and he
wow,
could speak Arabic. And I, I we were in London. I think we went to Petticoat Lane Market once, and my dad suddenly took off like a rat down a drain pipe. Where's he going? And there was an Arabic guy with the full gear on, like a sort of Saudi looking chap,
Yeah.
with some ladies walking behind him. And my dad started a conversation with this guy, and this chap was absolutely flabbergasted. I just remember this guy's face when my dad started talking to him. And of course, obviously, all the gestures and everything, which, were very un-English, because as he started talking. Anyway, they were talking for a good 10 minutes.
That must have been interesting for you as a child.
It was fascinating because I'd never seen that side of him. And, so I think, as you say, it's interesting because, again, that way that when somebody speaks in another language and then they start to use the type of gestures that you would use, like all this sort of stuff, going on, which he wouldn't have done speaking English. So
yeah,
it's intriguing.
it's different place it takes you to, because it sounds like I'm applauding not being ignored, but I kind of enjoyed it. Happened a couple of times last year. I was just hanging out with people, and we share food together. That's an interesting, brings people together. But there'd be people playing cards, just hanging out, and just in picking up very little from the language, because it is, European languages have kind of fair amount of commonality, certainly in terms of intonation. But it was interesting, and I did come away saying, "Oh, I'm going to learn before I go back," but I've got less than 2 weeks to do that now, so I think I might have left it a bit late, but
probably
to be that fluent. But
yeah, cool. Anyway, Steve, we've been talking for an hour or so, even longer. So that's been brilliant. I would have said it's a delight, but obviously it is a delight.
Yeah, you can say that if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. So
you could say delighted to meet you. That's
but
they're the top two. They're the top two answers.
So often. Anyway, so I'll put the links in the show notes to your stuff if that's all right, so people can hear what you've done. Have a super journey. I hope you get lots of interesting, positive experiences.
It'll be a journey. Journeys are like that.
They are.
All sorts.
Yeah, it's good. Anyway, that's been a lovely chat, mate.
Yeah, thanks for the time. It's been interesting.
It's been really, really good. And when I'm sort of in North Wales, hopefully we'll meet up at some point.
Yeah, well, you'd be very welcome. And just a kind of Raven, anybody you knows who could help us take that to the finish line.
Yes, what I'll do is I will speak to someone myself, but we'll see if I can, because it's probably a river I've got to cross anyway at some point.
Yeah, well, let's cross it together. Yeah,
yes.
Cool. All right. Thanks very much.
Mate. Yeah, that's great. Speak to you soon. Don't disappear, though.